Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on the fascinating world of near-death experiences, spirit communication, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hi, Magic is Real listeners. Fancy seeing you here. Thank you so much for being here. If this is your first time watching, thank you for joining and giving it a listen. I'm Shannon. This is Magic is Real. This is the podcast where we talk about spiritually transformative experiences such as NDEs, out-of-body experiences, Kundalini awakening experiences, and all things metaphysical. Today, I have with me Melissa Denyce, who is a regular human being. She's also the host of a podcast that I love, which is called Love Covered Life. And that covers NDEs. You may cover other things. I've only heard NDEs so far on your podcast. And I'm really excited to have her here because A, she's a fellow NDE podcast host. B, she is a human being with a beautiful story of her spiritual awakening and near-death like experience. Welcome, Melissa. It is so nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Shannon, and thank you so much for that introduction.
It is such a pleasure. Where I'd like to start is, I know what led to your spiritually transformative experience, but just for the viewers, I'd really like to hear a bit about where you come from, kind of what your background is, who you are as a human being, and what your life was like. And also, I'd love to know what your spiritual beliefs were before you had this experience.
Sure,
Go.
I would love to.
Now go.
Okay, so I was actually born into a pretty strict branch of Christianity. And the church that I was raised in now, I would say, was probably a cult. So I was raised in Reformed Baptist Christianity, and I'm not saying that all Reformed Baptist churches are the same as the one I was raised in, just to give that clarification. But I was taught that God has created most of the world's population just for the purpose of throwing them into hell for all of eternity, so that the people who are saved and end up in heaven could look and see basically what they missed out on and praise God for saving them from that. So that was very difficult for me to deal with. It caused me to become depressed at a very young age. It caused me to have pretty severe social anxiety and a lot of other emotional and mental issues. So I was within that atmosphere for the first 19 years of my life. And I was very, very devoted, though. I was very devoted to my faith. I was very devoted to God because, and I'm not sure if you want me to get into this, so you let me know if you want me to, but I had some pre-birth memories, some things that I remembered from before. And so I sort of had this tug of war going on inside me between what I remembered of the divine experience that I remembered that is impossible to put into words and so much better than we could ever imagine, versus what I was taught, that God is basically this monster that just is going to torture people for all of eternity. And so I had this tug of war going on inside me, and I was very, very devoted to God. I was determined that I was going to figure out what is this thing that I remember. And so I searched for God or for the divine within the Christian faith that I was presented with. And I became very disillusioned with it. I got really tired of fitting inside the boxes that they had presented to me. And as soon as I was legally an adult at 19 years of age, I left that church and I joined a non-denominational assembly, not an Assemblies of God church, non-denominational charismatic church. And for me at that stage in my life, that was a huge step forward, because I went from being taught God created most of the world just to throw them into hell, and to God doesn't want anybody to go to hell, but most people are going to end up there anyway. But for me, that was huge. That was what I needed at the time. And I really grew spiritually a lot at that church. But eventually, I also became disillusioned with that. And um, I reached a point where my Christian faith just was not giving me what I needed. It just was not giving me the answers anymore. And so I'm kind of jumping ahead in the story here, but I discovered near-death experience accounts, and they reminded me so much of what I remembered from my pre-birth memories. And I was 29 at the time, and I was just so disillusioned with the Christian church, and I had been through so many hardships in my life that I wasn't finding the answers I needed, that I began reading these near-death experience accounts, and I said, I am just ready to accept what I know to be the truth. And I deconstructed my Christian faith within a matter of days, probably a couple weeks max. It was just like, okay, throw all of this out and let's get back to the basics. What matters? Love is all that matters. And that's where I landed, and that's where I've been since.
Great. I love the way that you told that so succinctly, but also so articulately. And I would love to hear about your pre-birth experiences. Starting there, just I'd love to know, at what point did you remember them? Like, what age were you and when
Mhm.
were you like, or was it something you always just remembered, like you remember what you did last year for your birthday, but you just thought it was normal? Or did one day you wake up and say, wait a second, I remember something?
Okay, sure. So my main pre-birth memory that I always talk about is of the light, what near-death experiencers call the light. And I have always had that. And I never thought that it was anything unusual as a child. I thought everybody knows this.
Yeah.
Everybody is just as obsessed with this divine being as I am. And so what that was, it's very, very difficult to put into words, and it's taken me 30 some years to figure out how to even begin to have a concept, let alone language for it. But the best way that I can describe it is like this hurricane of love and light. And so I remember, and again, I'm using visual language to describe it, but it was not a visual experience. It was something far deeper than that. So it was like being in the middle of this ocean of light, and it was made up of all these trillions upon trillions of minuscule lights, and each light was a being. And all together, this great light is what we would call God, or it is the source of all that is. And it is, on the one hand, like this magnetic energy field of love that is completely irresistible. Like, you see it, and it is all that you can think about getting into that light. On the other hand, it is not just an impersonal force field, it's a presence, it's alive, it's aware. And when you're in it, it's like being in the center of a hurricane, and there's these waves of light just swirling and raging around you, but it's made up of this completely overwhelming and all-encompassing love. And another thing about it that I've never forgotten is the music. It's also music. It's like light and love and perfection and music, and everything good that you could imagine is what that light is. And so I remember being in that light, and then I remember the feeling of being separated from it, which is how all of us feel here. And
Yeah.
I couldn't understand as a child where it had gone or what was going on.
I can imagine that being very confusing. And it actually brings up a few things for me. Years ago, before I believed in any of this stuff,
Mhm.
I think I was agnostic, but a lot of times I was atheistic. I remember uh, having this constant sensation. I would wake up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and be like, and I would have like a panic. And the panic was, I forgot somebody. Like I left somebody somewhere. Like I couldn't, and I talked to my sister about it and she said something like, oh, maybe it was, I think she might have said it might have been our old cat, like our cat that had died, that he'd been with me my whole life. And then he lived 19 years and then was gone or something. And I was like, oh, that must be it. Now, as all of this stuff is being shared with me, I'm starting to realize that was, I'm getting a chill. I just got massive. I haven't even ever said this out loud to anyone until right now. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm getting spirit tingles like crazy. So the feeling was I left something behind. Like this isn't, there's another life or another person. Almost felt like the feeling was more of like a husband, maybe a child, but it felt like someone so important that I'd left somewhere. And I was like, I have to go back for them. And it happened over and over and over and over. So I find it so interesting because now I'm realizing that that is sort of a very deeply buried old memory of a past life, or even just maybe it was that connection with God, as
Mhm.
we call it. Some people call it source, universe, whatever. And the way you just described that just made me like tear up, especially because I just lost one of my best friends who was a musician and I know he's in that light. So when you said that, it just made me so happy. I was just talking to his mom today and we were just talking about him. And I was like, knowing that is so incredibly comforting. And the fact that you said there's music and there's love and there's light, this is why I am obsessed with these stories. So enough about me, but I just wanted to thank you for that because you told it so beautifully. So again, you're going through your life and sort of where, well, I know that I know the story, but you know where I'm going with this is
Mhm.
um, at sort of what's happening in your life and what are you experiencing emotionally and going through when you have this experience and how did it happen?
Sure. First, can I just say thank you for sharing that? Because I can relate to it so much.
Oh, wow. And anything you want to elaborate on that I say, please do. It's not so much a
Okay.
question as that I'm asking you as just topic for discussion.
Okay. Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, I haven't had the waking up in the middle of the night like you said, but I've definitely had that same feeling like I'm forgetting someone really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's good to know I'm not alone.
Yeah. It's good to hear that too.
But as to your question, so are you talking about the spiritually transformative experience?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I was about 18 or 19, and this was right before I left my childhood church, right in that age range. So I had been very depressed as a child and a teenager, and just really in almost constant turmoil within myself. And I struggled with insomnia. I could never sleep because I was so miserable. And so I was constantly begging God for an experience because I had this memory, and I knew if I could just feel that again, all my pain would just melt away. And so I begged every single night for years on end and nothing happened. And I kind of get the feeling like I joke to myself about it, like they were just up there in heaven, like, oh, I guess we're gonna have to do something because she is just not getting this. But so I can't explain why it happened when it did, but one night I was laying in my bed, I was fully awake, and I was praying the same prayer, begging for an experience, and all of a sudden I was in another reality. So there's two stages to my experience. In the first stage, I still perceived myself to be in my body, laying on my bed. But I was in an ocean of love. And it was the same love that I remembered from before. I could feel these waves of love washing like up my body from my feet over my head. And it was washing over me and through me, and it wiped away all my pain within instant. And again, it was like this magnetic force field of love that was also a presence, and my entire consciousness was completely taken up with this experience of love. And I remember saying to it, where have you been my whole life? I have been looking for you this whole time, and now you are finally here. And I was prepared to just stay there forever. I mean, that is how satisfying it is. You could just forget everything that's ever happened to you and just stay there forever and never leave. It felt like I was cradled in my mother's womb and my father's arms at the same time, except it was the womb and the arms of the universe. And there are just no words to convey the safety and security and the comfort. And it just, you think about some of the things that you were taught in religion, like the idea that you could be eternally lost. It just seems laughable in the face of that type of love. So I don't know for sure how long I was there in that love, but at some point the second phase began and I expanded out of my head. My consciousness expanded out of my head, and I found myself somewhere up in the universe because I was looking down on the earth for part of my experience. I was looking down and I saw a number of things, which first I'll just say that time doesn't work the same way. So on the one hand, it was like I expanded at the speed of light. I knew everything that I could know, and then I contracted back into my head. But on the other hand, I was having all of these experiences at the same time. So the first thing that I remember is it was like waking up from a dream, and I woke up into this like brilliant, bright, heavenly place. And I guess what we would call my angels or my guides were there, and the presence was there. And they were conveying to me that all the things that you're afraid of, all the things you're judging yourself for, they don't even matter in this realm. They said, you have nothing to be afraid of. You have nothing to feel guilty for. You have nothing to feel ashamed for. There is no judgment waiting for you. This was planned. Your life is progressing exactly as it is supposed to, and we are so proud of you. And yes, we know that it's been extremely hard, but you are doing such a good job. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And I cannot convey the relief that I felt with hearing that. It was truly like waking up from a nightmare and realizing that it wasn't real. And I just don't know how to put this into words, but it's like you're this perfect, innocent, childlike soul, and you're completely surrounded by love and light, and you're eternally secure, and there's nothing that could ever go wrong. And you wake up and you remember this, and it's like, oh yeah, this is the truth. What was I so worried about? What was I stressing about down there? But anyway, that was one of the things. Another thing that I saw is I looked down on the earth and I saw that it was made of brilliant light, and everything in the earth, the trees, the people, the structures, everything is made of brilliant light, and the light is the arms of the Creator. It is the love of the Creator, and we are all stumbling around down here like toddlers trying to figure out right from wrong and what are we supposed to do. But from God's perspective, we are eternally held. We can never get away from him, even if we wanted to, because we are this light, and this light is the arms of God, and we can never not be what we are. The third thing I saw is I looked down and I saw the cosmic master plan of God. I know that's cheesy, but those were the exact words that I was given. And it was this beautiful, colorful, multidimensional Mandela pattern that was moving and shifting, and it contained the life path of every conscious being. And somehow it contained everything that we consider to be bad, all the suffering and pain that we experienced, but yet it was all perfection. It was all worked out for complete perfection. And so those were the experiences I had. Now, at the same time, it was like I told you, I was expanding at the speed of light. And all this happened in an instant. So how that part of it progressed for me is that I would ask a question and I would be given downloads of information in response to that question. I would know the answer to that question and how it fit in with everything else in the universe. And I kept doing this, asking question after question, and I was expanding at the speed of light until my consciousness contained everything that it was possible to know. And I had to get to that most expanded state of consciousness before I could see the master plan. It is so far beyond our ability to grasp here, but at that point I could understand it perfectly. And then the other thing that I saw right before I came back in is I saw the key to life. And I thought, wow, that is so simple. How can we not figure it out? But I wasn't allowed to remember that one.
That's what I figured.
Yeah. As soon as I saw it, I began to contract back into my head. I another thing I didn't mention is that I heard the music again through this whole experience, and I specifically noticed it as I was coming back into my head. And my consciousness felt like it was a balloon losing air, and I came back and I like clicked back into place. And I still felt that love, like that magnetic love, until I fell asleep. And so when I came back into my body, I was like, it was the first time I really, my mind came back online and started thinking about what had happened. And I thought, whoa, what just happened to me?
Yeah, I was wondering, how did you even fall asleep after that?
I was so at peace,
Yeah.
because it was that feeling of that love and that peace that I had been looking for my whole life. And so I was very relaxed after the experience.
Oh, you explained that so beautifully. You are so articulate
Oh,
in the way that
thank
you word
you.
things. You had joked before I started filming that you sometimes when you're interviewing, you felt so awkward. And I'm like, you're not
Yeah.
awkward at all. It's so succinct and so beautiful. So many things I have questions about. One thing that I wanted to comment on, first of all, I loved what you said about waking up from a nightmare. You know, you're in this nightmare and while you're in it, you're just in it and you don't even know you're dreaming. And then you wake up and you're like, oh, thank God. Oh my gosh, I didn't really get kidnapped by a bunch of like, like goblins or whatever. And that is so interesting. A friend of mine just did a DMT experience. The 5-MeO. What is it? 5-MeO. I always
I
forget the
know what you're
name.
talking about.
Yeah. Now I'm not endorsing drugs or endorsing or not endorsing. I'm just saying that a friend of mine really felt he needed a spiritual kind of he sort of he just had kind of he was very in his head. He was very heady all the time and just wanted a spiritual experience, did it and came back like a totally different person. And this was like a 10-minute experience. But what he described to me was exactly what you just described. He said, I saw it as every piece of like, I think he said, every grain of sand, everything down to the smallest grain of sand is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing at this very moment. I also loved what you said about even the bad things, because so many people are like, how is war allowed to happen? How are babies allowed to die? If there's a God, how could all these things happen? Well, it's all in a perfect order. And I can't even put it into words because it's not something I feel even equipped to say, but the understanding that the good and the bad, the light and the dark, it all goes together. But he had just texted me yesterday and said, I feel like kind of he was sort of feeling like he was falling out of that joy. And I said, he's like, how do I maintain that? How do I keep going back to it? And I said, well, first of all, I don't think you have to be in this constant state of enlightenment and joy and grace and spirituality all the time. I said, you also need to be present for the pain and the hard stuff. That's part of the life experience. However, if you're asking how to get back to it, or he said, how do you keep maintaining your joy? And I was like, yesterday I had a hard day. I said, yesterday I was frustrated because I was having vocal problems. I'm a voice actor and I've healed, but sometimes it comes back and I get very upset. And I said, but it is what brings me back is remembering what people like you say. what people like you remind me is that this is a dream. And I have an intention that when I see my cousin, she's going to tattoo "Life is but a dream" on my arm because it's a touchstone. The reason that I'm able to stay in a constant state of peace and contentment these days is because I know this is all it's a game. Like it's all I keep telling myself, we're in the matrix. It's all a simulation. This is all like a chess game. It's just that's why I get excited about it to see what's going to happen next and what is this leading to. The reason I stay in that joy is magic is real and it excites me every day. And it's because when people like you tell your stories, it's all the same theme. Now, I I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but having pondered, I think certain people who have near death experiences or near death like experiences, you don't have to die to have them. They're sort of it's part of their life's path, their soul's path to have these experiences. You were meant to remember that pre-birth experience. And then when the time was right, be reminded again and shown again. What do you think the reason is that your soul was, I don't want to say chosen in us, but why were you one of the souls that were chosen to have this experience, do you think?
Yeah, and I will echo what you said. I think each of us has our own. I mean, a lot of the people that I interview have had so many more spiritual experiences and abilities than me. It's like I'm thinking I want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but as to why I was allowed to have the pre-birth memory, I think it's because that's part of my purpose here. Because I remember it, I just can't stop talking about it. And it's the only thing, I mean, it's been like the thing that I have cared about in my life is figuring out what was that and how can I get it back. And so I think I was allowed to remember it because I'm compelled to talk about it. I can't stop talking about it. And maybe there's other people who can benefit or gain comfort from maybe knowing where they came from.
That's what I thought you'd say. And that's what I believe too, that your purpose, and I'm sure there's more. I know you're also a mother, but
Mhm.
you have these important purposes that you come here for, and everyone's got them. And yours is to spread the message. And I always wonder if we're if it's important to the spirit world for us to share this information, then why doesn't everybody just know it already? Um, or
Yeah.
like if it's hidden from us and it's because we are meant to learn things our own way, then why is anyone allowed to know it?
Mm,
There's two questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
that is such a deep question. I guess my response would be that we are both individually and collectively in the process of awakening. So I do think there is an element to this life on earth where we aren't supposed to remember certain things because it would ruin our game, so to speak.
Yeah, like the
Because,
key to life. If
right.
you had the key to life, game over.
Yeah.
Your
So
work here is done.
right. Because it's like we're here to develop, really, it's all about love. So it's about the expansion of love. So we're here to develop love within ourselves. At least some of us are. And I think even that can vary between people also. But we're also here collectively contributing to the expansion of love itself or to the expansion of the universe itself by exposing ourselves to the contrast. And I don't know if you've heard or spoken with Christian Sundberg. He also has pre-birth memories, but that's what he says. He says we're on the cutting edge of creation here, and we are seeing how far can we get from our source in a simulated experience and still remember what we are and still be what we are, which is love. So there's an aspect where we want to forget certain things, but at the same time, we're going through a collective awakening right now. So we need to start to remember. And I think that's why we're becoming more and more aware of these near-death experience accounts. More and more people are being sent back with the message, and we're becoming collectively more accepting of it.
Yes, I love Christian. And his was one
Yeah.
of my favorite interviews. It's just like I could watch it over and over because there's so much goodness. And you
Yeah.
paraphrased it so eloquently as well. And I think that's so true. I mean, the stuff that's happening now, girl, I feel it. I mean, we're feeling there's a lot going on right now and it's super intense. And
Yeah.
a lot of people look at it as this is sort of the end of the world or the apocalypse, like things couldn't get any worse. But I really do believe that what you said about this mass awakening and that there's a reason why it's being shaken up because it's shaking it up so that we can all kind of come to the surface and the darkness is revealed so that the light can also be revealed. Unfortunately, it's like shaking something up. Like, yeah, there's going to be some dark stuff coming up, but there's also going to be so much light coming out. And I'm seeing it more and more. And that's even why I'm so open about my own spiritual beliefs now. And I'm just like, hi, I'm a medium. And I know people think that's weird. In fact, I got attacked by two strangers about it on saying, well, that's nonsense. And I'm like, I didn't attack your beliefs. Like, why are you attacking mine? I just said I believe in God. You don't know anything about me. And they got very riled up about it and started like assuming what I believed, assuming about my political beliefs. And because I said I believe in God. And I was like, guys, I was here agreeing with you, just saying this person said God doesn't exist, religion doesn't exist, and this is what I think. And I said, well, I actually do believe in God. And I'm also not comfortable with organized religion, but I totally respect those who are, whatever works for you. And I just said, and I also agree with you. So it doesn't really necessarily have anything to do with religion or something like that. And they both just decided that I was disagreeing with them. Anyway, and so the point of telling that story is not to bring attention to it. But what I said about that to my friend was just look at how, actually, I said it to Brooke and both Brooke and Trisha. I shared it with both of them because I said, look how afraid people are of the word God. Look how afraid people are of spirituality. There's a massive fear. And I understand because back in the day, I had a aversion to the word God. I had a aversion to the idea of religion and the Bible. And I didn't quite understand what it meant. And I just said it's really interesting how people get so triggered by the discussion. And also just that I said, well, I believe this because I'm a medium and that's my experience. And he said, well, that your experience is nonsense. And I'm like, well, but I keep talking about it because I think that it's important to talk about it and bring it to the surface. You don't have to believe in it. It's okay. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just saying, where are my fellow spiritual people at? And, and also, maybe when you know me and you're like, oh, she's a reasonable person. I know Shannon to be really logical and not like crazy. Maybe that's worth being curious about. So, and I love what you're doing too with your podcast and sharing your experience so vulnerably. It's so important, I think. And yeah, there will be people that will just crap all over it. And that's okay because, as you said, they're part of the whole process. Like we need those people. We need the contrast, and that's their own life path, and that is absolutely okay. So
Mhm.
I find that so interesting. Now, I know you mentioned that you're like, oh, I don't have that ability, or I wish I had that. Do you notice in your life, even if you don't consider yourself a medium or a healer or whatever, although I'd love to hear if you do possess those abilities that you're aware of, um, how do you feel that this has enhanced your intuitive abilities, and what
Mm.
intuitive abilities are you aware of that have been
Sure.
strengthened perhaps?
Yeah. I one funny thing I can say is that me and technology do not get along.
Okay, that
Yeah.
yeah,
I The only reason I can do this is because my husband is a network engineer and
great.
he created this computer for me, which is I think because his energy is in it, it works for me. But I have crashed every single other computer. I go through like 7 smartphones in a year. Even headphones, like he gave me a pair of his headphones, expensive headphones. They stopped working for me. I couldn't get them to work on any device, no matter what it was. I gave them back to him and they work fine. So there's that.
Yeah, I've heard that from quite a few people that have experienced the other realm.
Uh-huh.
Your vibration, your energy interferes with you're on a higher vibration. It interferes with technology. Like spirits
Yeah.
can manipulate lights and things like that as well because they're in a higher vibration.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I don't have any healing or psychic gifts that I'm aware of. The one thing that I've always had, this was even before my experience, I've had this since I was born, is that I call it like seeing people's souls. So I read energy or I feel people's energy. So I just have to be within somebody's energy field, either remotely, like over Zoom, or in person. Sometimes even seeing a video is enough, and I can like, it's hard to explain, but like I can see who they are. I
That's so
can
cool.
feel their level of energy and what their blocks are, and maybe like different things about how their personality has developed because of maybe how they were hurt in their past, things like that. And then the other thing is I can receive communication from the other side, but I have to be either asleep, I could get it in a dream, or almost asleep, like deep into theta. Then
Yeah.
I could get messages. But I
Well, it's
think when I'm awake, my brain just gets in the way too
well,
much.
I was going to say, I mean, so does mine. That's why I had to intensely study mediumship for 2 years and meditate
Uh-huh.
because my brain is a very busy place and there's always a lot going on. And I'm very analytical and logical. I have had to teach myself to get out of my logical mind. And the more I'm able to do it, the better my readings are. But also, when you're a mother, you have what, 3 kids?
Yeah.
You've got a lot of activity and a lot of I just wanted to say hustle and bustle. Is that something that somebody in your family said? Because I feel like I just got that like phrase I was like, I've never used that phrase in my life, but it just felt like someone saying hustle and bustle. So you obviously have a lot going on. And plus you're doing like so many podcast interviews and I'm sure other stuff as well.
Mhm.
Do you offer services to people for energy readings and things like that? Or is it something that you just observe?
It's just something that I observe. And if I'm
Yeah.
close to the person, I'll share it with them.
Yeah. I'd say that's a pretty strong intuitive ability to be able to really delve into someone's energy in that way,
Mhm.
which is really the same thing as mediumship. It's just a different entity or a different energy you're tuning into, and sometimes the messages are stronger than others. So
Yeah.
it is. Now, how has having had this experience, how has it changed the way that you go through the world
Mm.
generally? Even as a mother, I'd love to hear how it affects your parenting even.
Oh, absolutely. It's changed so much. And it did take several years because at first I kept it to myself. I didn't fully accept it because it went against everything I had been taught, and it's like I was still young, there was nobody I could talk to about it. But when I finally did accept it, it was actually 10 years later because I was 29. It prompted a massive spiritual awakening for me, where it caused me to just, like I said, just deconstruct everything within a matter of a couple of weeks. And it changed everything because I went from this very negative, depressing worldview that the world is just going to be burned up and everybody's going to hell, to realizing, wait a minute, everything is divine, everybody is divine, everything is perfect, every person is an expression of divine love, every person is, regardless of their flaws, regardless of what they may have done, they are exactly where they're supposed to be. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They're learning at their own pace. And so it caused me to relax, to have a lot more peace, to not feel like, because when you're raised in the church, you're taught if you don't share the gospel with all these people, you're responsible for them going to hell. And
It's a
then I
huge
realized,
burden.
yeah, it's such a huge burden, but it also it can cause some arrogance too, because it's like, well, we're better, we have the answers, and we have to get these people to accept our way of thinking. So going from that to, no, I don't have to worry about that. These people, their journey is just as valid as mine. I can learn something from them. I can accept them where they're at,
Mm-hmm.
which is ultimately what people want. They want to be unconditionally loved and accepted. I don't have to agree or approve of everything, but I can see them. I can know that I'm no better than they are. We're both on our own journey, and that is okay. And I can be at peace with that. So there was that aspect. And then as far as my parenting, I'm so glad that I had this realization early on, because let's see, my daughter was born, I think, when I was 25. So I had a few years where I was still pretty religious, but my mindset shifted because I realized I don't have to get my kids saved. They're not on their way to hell. I don't have to convince them that they're a sinner and they need a savior and all this stuff. No, I came to the realization that they are divine beings that chose me to be their mother, chose my husband to be their father. They wanted this life. They came here to us, and they are gifts. And they are, I'm glad I had that realization as early as I did, because my children are more advanced than I am. I can say that. I don't know where they came from, but I'm really glad that I didn't try to suppress them and control them into one way of thinking, because they came here to teach us. They came here to help us in this transition, and to be able to recognize that and say, yeah, I need to guide them. I'm here to help them discover their path and develop their gifts. So that was also really liberating for me.
That's so beautiful. There's that's I wish everyone could raise their kids with with that mindset of just such tolerance and compassion and allowing them to be the people that they are. And they are such gifts, and they're so much more intelligent than people give them credit for. Just because they haven't been around as long doesn't mean they don't have this connection to the universe and this infinite wisdom that
Mhm.
often does get suppressed. And that's
Yeah.
so interesting. What does the role of religion have in your life
Mm.
now?
I believe that most religious paths, and I think we can all probably point out some that are not very beneficial, but as a general rule, most religious paths exist because there's people who need them. And there's a lot of really beautiful and helpful things within religion. So I'm not anti-religion. Um, I do think, specifically within Christianity, because that's what I'm familiar with, that there's some things that can be harmful if they're taught to kids in a certain way. And so I have sort of spoken out against that. But generally speaking, I think you can take the good out of it. And at this point in time, my kids and I do attend a very progressive, inclusive Christian church, just because we needed community and there's not a lot of options in this area. Um, but in our home life, we sort of take from different traditions, like from Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, whatever is fitting, whatever feels like it's going to, whatever's speaking to us in the moment. Because I think that a lot of religious practices, like for instance, meditation and breath work, it can be very beneficial to help you progress spiritually. So we just do whatever's working for us.
I also really appreciate that. And I know I'm a big yoga person and meditation, and I have a friend, someone I met online through a private group, and he's in Egypt. So he's a Coptic Christian, and he said, "Oh, yoga is very much against our religion."
Mhm.
And I thought, I didn't ask because we're not close friends, but I was kind of like, oh, that's really too bad, because we're in a group for people that have muscle tension dysphonia. And I have this chronic stress disorder where my whole throat closes up. And as a voice performer, it's been devastating, although yoga and breath work and meditation have helped me immensely in healing. And he has this too. He runs this group, and I just thought, oh, that's such a shame. And I don't know why that is, is it because of the, I don't, is it because they feel you're going to attract like dark entities? Is it because you're supposed to have a direct line to God? I mean, I said, well, and I didn't argue, obviously, but I just felt like, but it's just stretching, like it's stretching and breathing. I
Yeah.
mean, you can make it a more spiritual, it depends on your intention while doing it. But there are just so many, and I think there's so many beautiful things in all religions. And I've always felt that there is some truth to every single religion. I don't personally subscribe to there's only one right religion.
Yeah.
I believe they're all based on the knowledge that there's something more than us and that there's something bigger than us. And I respect whatever works for you as long as it's a loving,
Mhm.
as long as it's expressed lovingly and it's not judgmental and it's not telling people that, if you're gay, you're going to be, you should be
Right.
stoned. Just
Right.
anything like that. But apart from that, I really do respect all religions and find, as you said, I find a little bit in Buddhism and a little bit in Hinduism and a little bit in Christianity. And I think
Mhm.
that's so beautiful when you can incorporate all of them and not think that one has to be in opposition to the other.
Right.
Do you know why yoga is
Yeah.
forbidden in some religions? Because I don't. I could probably research it, but
Yeah, I can tell you why it's forbidden in Christianity.
yes,
It's
please.
because it comes from Hinduism. And so the idea in Christianity is that Christianity is the only right
Right.
religion. And so if anything stems from any other religion, it's automatically going to be condemned. The other reason why is because in Hinduism, you have the idea that through yoga, you can achieve union with God. And so
Hmm.
they will say, well, that's not the true God. So they must be achieving yoga or they must be achieving union with the devil. And so that's
Yeah,
seen as very dangerous.
that's pretty much what I assumed, especially because it is a moving meditation, and
Mhm,
meditation puts you in touch with the higher realms as well.
mhm.
And so I know there's a fear around, well, hey, what are you doing? You're not really allowed to do that without us sort of monitoring the way that it's done, or if it's not done through prayer or whatever that can be. And that's the problem that I've always personally had with religion, is just organized religion, rather. Again, I respect it. I respect atheists. I respect
Mhm.
anyone's beliefs. It's okay. But it's just interesting how there's such a closed-mindedness against, no, we can't do that, and that's the part that doesn't work for me. So
Yeah.
and I think, just as I said, just even the fear I got today from atheists that were couldn't listen to what my message was because they were so hung up on the fact that I said I believed in God. They're like, oh, you must be this kind of person, and I was like, I didn't say that. I'm just saying that's my belief. And I said, and respectfully, I absolutely honor your doubt, your skepticism, and your right to believe the way you believe. So I really love your message of not throwing religion away, but focusing on what works for you and what doesn't, and being accepting of the idea that we are all connected. So what is it that, if there was one thing that you want people to know, if I came to you and we never met and it was okay for you to just dump some wisdom bomb on me, what would it be?
Mm. If there's one thing that I would want people to know, it is that love is the answer. It really is that simple, even though it doesn't seem like it is. I would also say that you are far more than you perceive yourself to be. You are a divine being. You are infinitely powerful and loving, and you are a manifestation of divine love. And so, if we can begin to awaken to that collectively, then we're going to see how much more we're capable of than we think we are. And the way that we do that is by responding to each moment in love with whatever is presented to us in each moment. Respond in love to the best of our ability. And that's really all it takes to see the world change. We just have to believe that it's possible.
Oh, that's beautiful. This is kind of a big question, kind of a big question. It's a big question. The big question is, What can we do? I feel like lately there's so much heavy stuff happening and
Mhm.
people are really upset. There's been a lot of division, there's a lot of fear, understandably. People are feeling threatened, there's war happening, there's a pandemic happening. What can we do individually to help? I keep feeling like breaking out and like give peace a chance, but really, what can we do collectively apart from the obvious, which is like donating, voting, whatever it is that you
Mhm.
can do. But what can we do collectively to heal the darkness?
Yeah. When you look at the world, it can be so overwhelming because we feel like there's nothing that we like. How can we influence what's going on the other side of the world, or like all the people who are affected by the pandemic? And aside from what you said, doing whatever you can by voting or being active in whatever way you feel led to, I think the most important thing that each one of us can do is to work on our own spiritual awakening and expanding our own consciousness. And one of the ways that you can do that is by when those feelings come up within yourself, when that fear and that anxiety comes up within yourself, because we're all dealing with that, is sitting with it, learning not to run from it, but accepting it and loving it. And through doing that, you can transmute it into something far more powerful within yourself. You can start to clear those energies out of yourself and expand your own awareness. You can also use spiritual practices like we were talking about with meditation, or even using breath work. Specifically on this question, I highly recommend Aaron Abke's YouTube channel. He has a lot of really practical ways that people can expand their consciousness through breath work and meditation, also through forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving others, just starting to let go of those things that are blocking you and holding you back. And then just expressing love to each other in whatever way you can, doing your part to make your corner of the world a better place.
I love that answer. Can you spell Abke just so that
A,
we
yeah, ABKE.
that's how I saw it in my mind, but I figured that way. Thank you for recommending it. And I know how important it is for others to, share your podcast. And I know that Aaron will really appreciate that. So um, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would love to sort of say, promote, talk about, share? Really, the platform is yours. What do you want to say?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. Your questions have been amazing, and it's been such an honor to be on your show. I would just say to everybody to just remember that um, this life has been planned. You are here for a reason. Everything is going to be okay,
Thank you.
even if it does not feel that way. Yes, things get really dark here, things get really, really difficult. But try to find peace within the present moment. Try to focus on love and on expanding your own awareness, and just welcome what comes to you. Welcome what comes to you in each moment. Trust that you're being guided, that you're being held, that everything is for a higher purpose, and that it will be worth it in the end. We are going somewhere beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Melissa Denise. You are such a beautiful person and soul. And it has been such an honor to have you. And I look forward to spending time with you in the future in person, but also staying in touch as a friend. I just adore you.
Thank you so much, Shannon. You are also such a beautiful soul. And thank you so much for doing what you do and for putting yourself out there. I know it's not always easy.
Likewise. Thank you.